This is a presentation of the University of Wisconsin-Parkside.
short background lecture. He asked if I could do 3 minutes, and I said, how about a minute and a half? I only have 5 bullet points, but there will be a quiz afterwards, so take notes. The inspiration for Teleman's Quixote is Miguel de Cervantes' famous novel, Don Quixote, from 1605 and 1615. Cervantes died in 1616, only about a year after the second part of his novel was published. His prestige in the Spanish-speaking world is similar to that of Dante in Italy, Homer in Greece, or Shakespeare in the English-speaking world. And in fact, with Homer, Dante, and Shakespeare, his work is considered among the world's masterpieces of literature. A recent survey of writers by the Nobel group found among the 100 best works of fiction the world has ever seen, Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote ranks #1. Don Quixote, or the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote de la Mancha, as I mentioned, was published in 2 parts in 1605 and 1615. It's a work, among other things, about refusing to grow old. Our hero, a gentleman farmer of modest means, is addicted to books of chivalry and talks about them constantly with his friends, the local parish priest or curate, and the barber. I'm reading tonight from Tobias Smollett's 1755 translation, which is contemporaneous with Telemann. So eager and entangled was our Hidalgo in this kind of history, that he would often read from morning to night and from night to morning again without interruption, till at last, the moisture of his brain being quite exhausted, with indefatigable watching and study, he fairly lost his wits. All that he had read of quarrels, enchantments, battles, challenges, wounds, tortures, amorous complaints, and other improbable conceits took full possession of his fancy, and he believed all of those romantic exploits so implicitly that in his opinion the Holy Scripture was not more true. He observed that Cid Ruy-Diaz was an excellent knight, but not equal to the Lord of the Flaming Sword, who with one backstroke had cut 2 fierce and monstrous giants through the middle. He had still a better opinion of Bernardo del Carpio, who at the Battle of Roncesvalles put the enchanter Orlando to death by the same means that Hercules used when he strangled the earthborn Antion. Neither was he silent in the praise of Morgante, who, though of that gigantic race which is noted for insolence and incivility, was perfectly affable and well-bred. But his chief favorite was Reynaldo of Montalban, whom he hugely admired for his prowess in sallying forth from his castle to rob travelers, and above all things, for his dexterity in stealing that idol of the impostor Mohammed, which according to history was of solid gold. For an opportunity of pummeling the traitor Galalong, he would willingly have given his housekeeper body and soul, nay, and his niece into the bargain. In short, his understanding being quite perverted, he was seized with the strangest whim that ever entered the brain of a madman. This was no other than a full persuasion that it was highly expedient and necessary, not only for his own honor, but also for the good of the public, that he should profess knight-errantry and ride through the world in arms, to seek adventures, and conform in all points to the practice of those itinerant heroes whose exploits he had read, redressing all manner of grievances, and courting all occasions of exposing himself to such dangers as in the event would entitle him to everlasting renown. This poor lunatic looked upon himself already as good as seated by his own single valor on the throne of Trebizond, and intoxicated with these agreeable vapors of his unaccountable folly, resolved to put his design into practice forthwith. Don Quixote began to cry aloud. This way, ye valiant knights! Now is the time to show the strength of your invincible arms, that the courtiers may not carry off the honor of this tournament. When the curate and the barber arrived in Don Quixote's chamber, they found him on the floor, proceeding with his rhapsody and fencing with the walls, as broad awake as if he had never felt the influence of sleep. Laying hold on him by force, they reconveyed him to his bed, where, after having rested a little, he returned to his ravings and addressed himself to the curate in these words. Certainly, my lord, Archbishop Turpin, we who are called the 12 peers of France will be greatly disgraced if we allow the court knights to win the victory in this tournament, after we, the adventurers, have gained the prize in the 3 preceding days. Give yourself no trouble about that consideration, my worthy friend, said the curate, for Providence may turn the scale, and what is lost today may be retrieved tomorrow. In the meantime, have a reverent care for your health, for you seem to be excessively fatigued, if not wounded grievously. I am not wounded, replied the knight, but that I am battered and bruised, there is no manner of doubt, for the bastard Don Orlando has mauled me to the mummy with the trunk of an oak, and all out of mere envy because he saw that I alone withstood his valor. But may I no longer deserve the name of Reynaldo of Montalban if, when I rise from this bed, I do not repay him in his own coin, in spite of all his enchantments. Meanwhile, bring me some food, which is what I chiefly want at present, and let me alone to take vengeance for the injury I have received. In compliance with his desire, they brought him something to eat and left him again to his repose, not without admiration of his madness and extravagance. attack on the windmills. Look there, Sancho, friend, and behold, 30 or 40 outrageous giants with whom I intend to engage in battle, and put every soul of them to death, so that we may begin to enrich ourselves with their spoils. For it is a meritorious warfare, and serviceable both to God and man, to extirpate such a wicked race from the face of the earth. What giants do you mean, Sancho? Says. Those you see yonder, replied his master, with vast extended arms, some of which are 2 leagues long. I would your worship would take notice, replied Sancho, that those you see yonder are no giants, but windmills. And what seem arms to you are sails which, turned with the wind, make the millstone work. It seems very plain, said the knight, that you are but a novice in adventures. These I affirm to be giants, and if thou art afraid, to get out of reach of danger, and put thy prayers for me, while I join with them in fierce and unequal combat. So saying, he put spurs to his steed, Rocinante. Sighs of love for Princess Aline, or Dulcinea. Sovereign and sublime princess, he who is wounded by the edge of absence, and whose heart is stuck full of the darts of affliction, most divine Dulcinea Virtuoso, wishes thee that health which he is not doomed to enjoy. If I am scorned by thy beauty, if thy virtue affords me no relief, if thy disdain completes my misfortunes, albeit I am inured to suffering, I can ill support the misery I bear, which hath not only been excessive, but also of long duration. My trusty squire Sancho will give thee an ample relation, O ungrateful beauty and lovely foe, of the situation in which I remain on thy account. If it be thy will to succor me, I am thy slave. If not, use thy pleasure, for the end of my life will satisfy thy cruelty and my desire. Thine till death, the Knight of the Rueful Countenance. Sancho Panza swindled. As the wicked are always ungrateful, and necessity puts them to their shifts, and the present convenience overcomes the prospect of future quiet, Ginés de Pasamonte, who was neither grateful nor good-natured, resolved to steal Sancho's ass. Undervaluing Rocinante as a subject that he could neither pawn nor sell. Accordingly, while the squire was asleep, he stole Dapple, and before morning he was gone far enough to elude all pursuit. The appearance of Aurora that rejoices the earth had quite a contrary effect upon Sancho Panza, who, missing his Dapple and searching for him in vain, began to utter the most woeful lamentation that was ever heard. And Don Quixote, waked by the noise, heard him exclaiming in this manner, "O son of my bowels, born in my house, the playfellow of my children, the delight of my spouse, the envy of my neighbors, and comforter of my cares, in short, the half of my sustenance." He is talking about Don. Don Quixote, hearing this complaint, and being informed of the cause, consoled Sancho with all the arguments in his power, and begging him to have patience, promised to give him a bill of exchange, on sight of which he should receive 3 asses out of 5, which the knight had left at home. Sancho, being comforted with this declaration, dried up his tears, moderated his sighs, and returned 1,000 thanks to Don Quixote for his generosity. As they sauntered among the rocks, the knight's heart rejoiced to see places so well adapted to those adventures he was in quest of. Rocinante galloping. This novel has a lot of taste in it. Don Quixote, perceiving his enemy approaching with such speed, drove his spurs stoutly into the meager flanks of Rocinante, and made him spring forwards in such a manner that the history says this was the only occasion on which he was ever known to gallop, for at all other times his swiftest pace was no other than a downright trot. Rocinante began to neigh and dappled to bray most melodiously, a circumstance which was looked upon by both our adventurers as a fortunate signal and most happy omen, though, to deal candidly with the reader, the brayings of the ass exceeded in number the neighings of the horse, from whence Sancho concluded his fortune would surmount and overtop that of his master. But whether or not he founded his belief on his knowledge in judicial astrology, I cannot determine, the history being silent on that subject. Yet, certain it is, he had been heard to say when he stumbled or fell, that he wished he had not stirred over his own threshold, for nothing was to be got by a stumble or a fall, but a torn shoe or a broken bone. And truly, simple as Sancho was, he had some reason for making that observation. Don Quixote at rest. Don Quixote, finding himself inclined to slumber, desired he might be left alone, and the company retiring, he is said to have slept 6 hours at a stretch, so that the housekeeper in Nice began to fear he would never awake. Nevertheless, he awoke at the expiration of the aforesaid time and exclaimed aloud, "Praise be the Almighty God, for the great benefit I have received from his bounty. His mercies know no bounds, nor are they abridged or impeded by the transgressions of man." The niece, who listened attentively, hearing this, more sensible and connected than anything he had uttered since the beginning of his illness, said, "Uncle, what do you mean? Has anything new befallen us? What mercies and transgressions are these you mention?" "Mercies," replied the knight, "which heaven hath this instant been pleased to vouchsafe unto me, notwithstanding the heinousness of my transgressions. I now enjoy my judgment undisturbed, and cleared from those dark shadows of ignorance in which my understanding hath been involved, by the pernicious and incessant reading of those detestable books of chivalry. I am now sensible of the falsity and folly they contain, and nothing gives me concern but that this conviction comes too late to give me time sufficient to make amends by reading others which would enlighten my soul. I feel myself, cousin, at the point of death, and I would not undergo that great change in such a manner as to entail the imputation of madness on my memory. For, though I have acted as a madman, I should not wish to confirm the character by my behavior in the last moments of my life.
Thank you very much for coming to tonight's concert. I apologize for my voice. I'm still recovering from being ill the entire week. But there's one thing that I would like to say about this concert of tonight. We have El Quixote with Telemann before. Now we are going to enjoy a Bizet with El Cid, or that noble hero of the tales in medieval tales in Spain also. A knight that was fighting in the Reconquista. So during those times, this is the overture to the opera Don Rodrigo, and it has all the collection of the most memorable tunes in that opera. And the one thing that I need to say is that Bizet, being the fantastic opera composer, although never recognized in his life, being the true opera composer that he was, it's beautiful to see all the connecting lines, all the beautiful romanticism in the different melodies that they are presented in this college. So by all means, enjoy a trip.
here.